I just grew up very diversely around all types of people, lived in my neighborhood. So I hung out with a bunch of different kids growing up all of the time. Coming to Hope, I guess any person going to college, you expect it to be some of the best times of your life. You expect to go in meeting friends, meeting people, learning new things, just having a welcoming community, another place that you can look back on, you know, later in life and be like, wow, like I really loved where I went to school. I really loved Hope College. And so that was my thought going in, is that I'm going to leave here a better person, changed, and having such a great experience. Coming to Hope, having come from a diverse background and now coming to Hope College, which is not diverse at all, it was different, but I didn't expect to be treated the way I was. Even though it was less diverse, I still expected to be treated as any other student would be coming to Hope's College campus, and that was not always the case. Having to, you know, see things, discrimination on campus, microaggressions in the classroom, just various things, having to fight for respect in the science department from professors and students. It was something completely different to me, and something I really had to work through. I think what really stood out to me is being in the science department. So I'm a psych major, and coming in, there's only 2 women of color in my class that are psych majors, and the other person actually left last year. And so going into the classroom where you're the only person of color and having to do group projects, or when the teacher says, oh, turn to your partner or turn to your neighbor and partner up and kind of go over quiz questions, I never got picked. And so it was constantly having to prove that, no, I do know the work, no, I do understand the concepts, and I do understand what's happening, that people started. It had to take for me to get into the upper level classes for people to start, oh, I've seen you a few times, I've seen you here and in this class, and now you done made it here, I guess we can be partners now, we can work it out. So it took a while for me to have to get into the 300, 400 level classes, and now people are finally like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. But definitely in the beginning, no one would work with me. I feel like people of color always have to prove themselves more, because immediately you are looked at. As soon as you walk through the door, you don't even have to say anything for people to already cast judgment just based on how you look, what you're wearing when you come to the classroom, you know, what type of notebook do you even have? Is it like, you know, name brand or not? Like, people are constantly looking at you and seeing what level you are at, where are you coming from. And, you know, from the way you talk to the way where you sit in the classroom, you're constantly being looked at. And it's discouraging to see, because you may be the only example that they have of a person of color. And so there's even more pressure to represent your entire race, which is not fair, but it's a responsibility that I think a lot of students of color take on, being at a predominantly white institution, because you know that your representation may be the only thing that that one white person or that classroom or that professor may ever be in contact with. I think that's one of the first things I noticed when I walk into the classroom, is how many students of color are in this classroom. And where are they sitting? Because I want to sit next I want to sit next to them, but I also want for us to be support for each other, because it's going to be, I know there's going to come a time throughout the semester where we're going to have to lean on each other, whether that's for a project or there's a certain topic that comes up or a certain situation that happens on campus where it's just, or something happens nationally to our people where we have to lean on each other for support no matter what. I think a lot of people, or some people here, definitely stereotype people of color because they've never had a relationship with someone of color, when the only things you see are the news or TV shows and reality TV and music videos. You have a very false representation, or you have a one-sided story of people of color, and that's the only story that you know, but you don't know all the variations of people of color. You don't know all the different backgrounds and the different characteristics and the different cultures. You have a one-minded view of people, and you see that a lot. I mean, on Hope's campus, I've been told multiple times, oh my goodness, you're the first Black friend I've had, or you're the first this, or you're the first that. And it's really sad to see, because they seem surprised when they say it. And that's why it really worries me when I hear people say that, because they're surprised that they were able to even form a relationship with a person of color. People of color have done things in the sciences, in the arts, in math, and everything, and they've learned nothing about our people and what we've accomplished or the things that we've added into various fields. And so they come in here thinking maybe they can only play basketball, maybe they can only sing, maybe they're only ghetto. Maybe they're only low income because they don't know anything but the one story that they keep hearing repeated and repeated. Yes, I've been labeled the angry Black woman, being overly aggressive, too strong-willed, and these stereotypes that people have are just a false perception of who I am. They actually really don't know me. You know, the leadership qualities that I have, the aggression that you're saying that I have is actually my strong suit. It's actually the leadership quality that I have. This angry Black woman that you presume that I am is actually not angry at all, but is actually a woman that is trying to strategically figure out how we can work better together. But you look at my face and you hear the tone in my voice, and for some reason, people are already put off, or already, you know, like, what is she about? Or, you know, defensive, right? You know, I'm not assertive, you know, but I'm overbearing. And so it's all these things that people twist when they see me. Every single professor of color I have leaned on, especially the Black professors. I could name them all for you because they are amazing. They're the people. They will take the time for you to come to their office, sometimes even their houses, because they understand of the environment and the climate on campus and how toxic it can be at times, and how at times even in your own dorm room you may still be the only person of color there, and that you don't even feel safe there sometimes. And so they're the ones that you're able to lean on for guidance, whether it's academic, spiritually, mentally, socially. They're there for all of it. And I love that about the professors of color here, is because they're not just here for the academics, but they're here to help us grow holistically. Going back to the election, that was a very hard point for me personally, because I was the president of the Black Student Union at that time. And so it wasn't just about my feelings. It was about all the students of color feelings that I knew that they were going to be looking at me. And I also was an RA and Scott Hall, which is for the Phelps Scholars Program. So I also have a bunch of freshman students of color who are also looking at me for guidance and direction. And so just waking up that morning, having heard what happened, because I did not watch the election. I was not staying up to watch what was going to happen. And so waking up to that news, it was devastating. And I just had to pray, because I needed to pray for guidance on how was I going to help students of color feel safe and have their feelings being validated on our campus at a PWI school. How was I just operate in the classroom, again, being in the science department and still being the only person of color in my classrooms, and knowing that other students are also maybe the only students in their classroom. And so looking back, I remember like some of the first moments was getting knocks on my door that morning from various students of color, freshmen, that were scared to leave Scott Hall. There had been multiple threats that happened to Scott Hall where they were saying, multiple letters being sent to our hall saying, oh, they need to build a wall around Scott Hall, and just all these nasty, hateful things where none of my residents, none of my students felt that they were safe and able to go to class that day. And so I did go to class that day. I'm the type of person that I'm going to go and do what I need to do. People are not going to intimidate me at this campus. And I also wanted to show other students that, no, we're going to be strong and we're going to make it through this, and we're not going to let the environment of this campus and this situation stop us from our goal, for the end goal, which is for us to get an education and for us to succeed. And so I did go to class that day, and after class, there was actually a meeting where a whole bunch of students of color gathered in Martha Miller, and we just talked. And some of those students I had never seen before. They've never been to a Black Student Union or the Latino Student Organization or Asian Student Perspective, but this is the first time in their lives where they were shut out from their white friends, where their white friends blatantly told them, hey, we can't be friends with you anymore because Trump is president. We can't do that. And they were going through an identity crisis where we had to help them, be okay with who they were and be okay in understanding that they are worth more than that and they deserve better friends than that. And then I had situations as president where, students were coming to me because they were getting spit on campus, or because they were getting taunted. I have some of my Latino women being taunted back to, their dorm rooms and being chased by white male students on campus, and having Black men being called the N-word repeatedly in the classroom. And so it was so heartbreaking and so disturbing to see that was happening, because this was a Christian campus. And we are supposed to be rooted and founded in Christ. And those Christian values and those Christian principles, they were not being shown at all. These were the same people that I would see in chapel 3 days a week and at gathering on Sunday nights were now spreading out racial slurs, are now intimidating students. Where is the love for your neighbor? Where's the love for your brothers and sisters? That wasn't happening. And so that's why I was even more distraught, because it doesn't matter who is president, because God sits on the throne. And that was not being understood by people. As president of Black Student Union last year, my goal was to uplift the Black students on Hope Campus, but to also educate the rest of Hope Campus. So I had a two-part goal. I definitely wanted our presence to be known, but I also wanted students of color to have a safe space, to have a place that they could feel like they could be themselves completely, and not have to put on a show or put on this fake facade while they were with us. And so it was a great experience. I really enjoyed being president because of the things that I was able to accomplish and able to do, just networking-wise, like being able to lead a chapel service last year on reconciliation. And this was actually right before the election. I did that. And that was during a heated time. And to be a Black woman that stood in front of all of these students, predominantly white students, and talk about reconciliation and the idea of us, actually living out the word and not just reciting it all the time or listening to it, but actually having it applied to our actual lives. And to be able to speak that and have it being received by some students was amazing. And also, last year, I led a service called Night of Healing, and that was a service about, it was to commemorate and honor the lives that were lost, the Black lives that have been lost due to police brutality. And there was a lot of pushback about this service because I wanted it in the chapel because it was a service. And a lot of people felt like that was something you have to have somewhere else. You shouldn't have it in the chapel. Maybe have it in Martha, which is, of course, on the outskirts of the campus, where people really don't go too much. And so, but I was like, nope, we're going to have it in the chapel. And it's a service. This is not, and I don't think people realize this was not a chance to talk about police brutality. This wasn't a chance for us to get into discussion, because I feel like we do that a lot, but there was never a chance to actually lament and sit and be still and understand how many people's lives have been lost. It's so many people that we forget the names, or which circumstances was this, or what city was it, or what actually happened. And that's terrible. And so it was a traditional service. I formatted it in a traditional African-American style. We had people from Grand Rapids that came, that sung for us. We did praise dance. We had an altar call, which is where you could come up for prayer, which is something that we practice in our churches. And so, and over 100 students came out to that event. And that was very impactful because of all the pushback that was happening the weeks before, and the flyers being snatched down, and all these different things. And to see that not only students came out, but faculty members came out, and administration came out. That was a wonderful thing to see. And so that's an example of how I wanted to make our presence be known to campus, and not just a conversation that BSU was having, but a conversation that the entire campus needed to be having. I absolutely think more work needs to be done. I do see some progression. Just looking at the students of color, like looking at the incoming freshmen, and they are some powerful people. They're out here pushing for things and striving for things that we weren't able to when we were freshmen. You know, the multicultural student organizations are more powerful than they were our freshman year, when there were only a couple of people going. Now there's tons of people going. And I see that I think we're having more opportunities. Obviously, there still is a lot of work left to be done. And I think through the 4 years, you can definitely look back and see the brokenness within the system. But I also see the ways in which we're trying to fix pieces of it. It is very sad, but I do see lots of students of color wanting to fit in, or trying to fit in, and pushing their culture aside in order to make it at Hope College. And when I see it, I can't even blame the student, because it's a coping mechanism. I mean, how many times are people going to call you out of your name, or mispronounce your name? Or how many times are there going to be microaggressions? Or how many times are people going to judge your culture, or the way you say things, or the way you dress, or where you come from, that you just give up and you're just like, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm just going to leave my culture aside because my culture keeps getting under attack, or I keep getting under attack because of my culture. And so students of color throw it aside all the time in order to thrive at Hope. And it's sad that they feel like they have to do that in order to make it here. I look at the financial aid office, I look at the health center, I look at CAPS, I look at campus ministries, and I look at student development, and I'm not seeing a person or a staff member of color there. Why isn't that there's someone in CAPS that's supposed to help students with mental health that also knows students of color's culture and background, that is able to be informed on their life circumstances or situations? Why isn't there a person of color in the admissions office that brings students to Hope College? And so there's various situations, there's various departments on Hope's campus that need to be worked on. Another thing that really needs to be worked on is the retention rate of students of color. I mean, we get a bunch that come in that freshman year, but then there's so many that can't stay here, whether that's because of academics or because of financial. But the problem is that Hope hasn't given them the tools to survive here, academically or financially. So you get students of color to come here and it looks good for the college, but what are we doing to keep them here? What are we doing? What skills, what tools are we equipping them with to stay and to thrive at Hope College? Not just be a student here, but to thrive here. And I see it all the time, year after year, especially for our men of color. There's a lot of Black and Hispanic men that end up dropping out because they haven't been given the tools and the equipment to stay here. And people haven't reached out, especially for people that have, this is their first time at college, and for families that have never been, their first generation. And no one's told them how to go through this process. There's no one there to help them through it. And so what are we going to do? What are we going to do about that, Hope College? It definitely has been a journey, to say the least. And I say that because just like you, I also wanted to transfer that very first year coming to Hope because I wasn't fitting in. It wasn't home at all. Like, I was just here trying to make it through. You know, and dealing with all those things we talked about, the racism, the microaggressions, and just just socially trying to fit in, and even like mentally trying to just make it work here. And so it's been hard, but it's been good too. Hope has given me a lot of experiences and a lot of opportunities, but it's also helped me to grow as a leader because of all the situations that we've had here and all the things that we've gone through. It's helped me to grow and to stretch into the person that I know I want to become.